Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. Those were wise words spoken by Howard Thurman, an African-American civil rights leader, author, educator, and mentor to Martin Luther King. But year after year, our studies show that around the world, our global workforce is very far from alive. The vast majority of employees around the world feel disengaged and unfulfilled at work, and nearly half feel stressed or anxious. There's a fundamental problem with how we're encouraged to choose our career paths. That problem is filtering through to create a lack of engagement, unfulfillment, stress, anxiety, and chronic health issues. Allow me to give you some statistics to set the scene. Gallup is an organisation that measures employee satisfaction around the world, covering 160 countries, including every continent except Antarctica. In 2023, they released their annual report called The State of the Global Workforce. In that report, they found that 23% of employees around the world consider themselves engaged at work. Gallup defines engaged like this. If you feel engaged at work, it means you find your work meaningful, it means you feel proud of the work you do, and you go the extra mile for your team and company. You feel connected and engaged with your teammates and the organisation you work in. Gallup celebrates the fact that the employee engagement rate has increased from only 12% when they first started measuring in 2009 to now 23%, which is a fantastic increase and achievement. However, it still means there's a huge 77% of people worldwide who consider themselves disengaged at work, which means they're simply filling a seat, watching the clock, putting in the minimum hours required to do their job, feeling psychologically disconnected from their employer and their teammates. Disengagement is not good for anyone, and it places a huge burden on businesses and the economy. Last year, the loss of productivity due to a disengaged workforce cost us $9 trillion globally, which is equivalent to around 10% of our global GDP. If you're not thriving at work, it's unlikely that you're thriving at life. Disengagement is one thing. The statistics for stress and anxiety are not good either. In a large study conducted by the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, it was found that 41% of adults say that they experience chronic stress that filters through into their daily lives at home. A third of those people take prescription medication to manage their stress, their nervousness, their emotional problems, or their inability to sleep. In Australia, where I live, 1 in 5 women develop chronic anxiety, and 1 in 8 men do too. Stress and anxiety weaken the immune system, making you much more susceptible to inflammation, autoimmune conditions, and chronic health issues, which leads to an even further decline in your mental well-being. And I know this from personal experience because that's exactly what I endured for more than 10 years. But more on that later. Sadly, the statistics for stress and anxiety in adults are also mirrored in our young children and teens. In a large study conducted by the American Health Institute, it was found that, similar to adults, 40% of all children experience stress levels that make them feel overwhelmed or burdened with the demands of life and school. 1 in 3 children said they were anxious. And sadly, this is extending through to an increase in hospitalisation rates for teen suicide. The number of hospital admissions in the last 10 years has doubled from teenagers wanting to commit suicide. In the study by the American National Health Institute, they found that the contributing factors to this rise in attempted suicide was the rise in social media, a world that feels scary and threatening. But the number one reason for the rise in teen suicide attempts was high expectations and pressure to succeed in a culture of achievement. High expectations and pressure to succeed in a culture of achievement. Pressure to succeed. What does that even mean? And I believe it's this very definition of success that's making us stressed, anxious, disengaged, unfulfilled, and sadly, for many people, suicidal. I was recently at a networking event talking to a parent whose child is studying in the gifted and talented program in high school, and he was telling me how much she needed to knuckle down if she wanted to achieve high enough marks to get into medicine. I said out of curiosity, "Oh, she wants to study medicine." And his answer was, "Well, she doesn't know what she wants, but that's what we're aiming for. It will set her up for success." And I thought to myself, there's that word again, success. What does that even mean? That she'll earn a big salary? That she'll be considered important and valuable in our society? That she'll have status? But will that make her happy? And for many people, yes, that version of success does make them happy. But it didn't make me happy. Allow me to take you back to a pivotal conversation I had when I was 17 years old, sitting at the dining room table with my father. I had my university enrolment papers laid out in front of me. I was excited and clear about what I wanted to study. I loved languages and writing, so I wanted to do a major in journalism with a minor in Italian. I could see myself travelling the world as an investigative journalist or being a UN translator for high-stakes conversations. I felt excited thinking about careers like that. So I told Dad this is what I was thinking, and my dad frowned and said, "Kate, there's no money in the humanities. If you want to guarantee yourself job security and financial freedom, you need to choose a career path that has a high demand for your skills. Something like science and engineering. People with those skills will always be guaranteed a job." I could feel myself deflate. I desperately wanted my parents' approval and validation, and I desperately wanted job security and financial independence. But I also knew what my heart wanted. Over the next couple of weeks, I struggled with the internal battle about whether to choose what my parents wanted or what I wanted. In the end, my head won the battle. I embarked on a career in the sciences, eventually making my way into a PhD in process engineering. I became a process engineer in a consulting firm for nearly 12 years. From the outside looking in, my life looked perfect. Over a 12-year period, I'd worked my way up to a senior management position in a consulting engineering firm. I was travelling the world, speaking at international conferences as an industry expert. I was working on exciting projects across Australia, Europe. I'd been in the USA for work. I'd won accolades and awards. I had won an award for women in engineering leadership. But no matter how many awards or how many accolades or how far up the corporate ladder I climbed, inside I was miserable. Over a period of about 10 years, my health had been declining gradually. What started out as fatigue turned into chronic stress, anxiety, and eventually chronic illnesses that I couldn't explain. The doctors had no answers for me. When I would go in there feeling desperate at why I felt so unwell and had no energy, they would tell me that everything was fine, there was nothing wrong with me, it was all in my head. And this led to an even further decline in my mental sanity. I eventually developed an autoimmune condition, Graves' disease. To cut a long story short, in my mid-30s, after a series of devastating events, my knees finally hit the floor. It was in that moment of complete breakdown that I could finally see that it was my career that was making me sick. I wasn't living my truth. It was during that dark time that I came across a quote by the ancient Sufi poet Rumi. The quote said, "Sometimes you hear a voice calling you through the door. This turning towards what you deeply love saves you." I chose to finally turn towards what I deeply love, and it did save me. I spent years in a journey of self-reflection and personal growth, trying to figure out who I was underneath all the layers of societal and family conditioning, and who was I if I wasn't an engineer. I found a way to find the career path that made me come alive, that aligns with my natural personality and my unique zone of genius and things that I feel passionate about. And now I get to spend my days helping people like me who don't fit into the corporate box to find and realise their contribution. I love what I do. I love who I am when I'm doing this work. My positive energy flows out and ripples beyond me to uplift and inspire those around me. And that is what I feel is the true definition of success. This is what we should be telling our young people, is what they should be seeking in a career, is a career that makes them come alive, a career that helps them be the best version of themselves so that their energy flows out and ripples to positively impact other people. There's a beautiful quote by Barbara Sher, who wrote a book in 1979 called Wishcraft. It says, if you're walking around dragging yourself at half throttle, if you're low on energy, it's likely that you're not low on vitamins or you have low blood sugar. It's likely that you haven't found your calling yet. And when you find your calling, you'll know it because you'll suddenly have all the health, energy, and inspiration that you need. Interestingly, people at the end of their lives have the best perspective on this whole topic. In 2009, an Australian woman called Bronnie Ware published a blog article called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Her article went viral, getting shared 3 million times in the first year. And it's because her blog resonated with the truth. Bronnie was a palliative nurse caring for people in their final days of life. She would sit with them, comfort them, and be a presence with them as they were reflecting on their lives, of their dreams that were fulfilled or not fulfilled, of the regrets they had. And over time, she compiled the top 5 regrets that she heard from her patients. The number 1 regret that her patients shared with her was this: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, instead of a life others expected of me. And so, as those in their final days of life tell us, the greatest gift you can give yourself and others is to choose to be true to yourself. But it does take courage to go against the grain. It does take courage to go against societal, religious, or familial messaging. There's a beautiful quote by the famous philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, to be yourself in a society that's constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And in life, whenever we have big decisions we need to make, we have 2 choices. We can either choose to be true to ourselves and risk disappointing others, or we can choose to please others and risk disappointing ourselves. When you choose to please others, you pay a high price. When you choose to please yourself and be true to yourself, you come alive. So don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. Thank you.